given these kinds of large language models that we could be using, given the kinds of applications that you've discussed and that people can get from their own discussions with a large language model of their choice, um, I've kind of alluded here. I've made the assumption that with something like the Pro-AI Studio SDK that is in early access now and will be fully available mid-year 2025, I've kind of assumed that we're talking about weeks or months kind of timeline to developing an enterprise AI application. Tell me, fill me on whether I was right with that assumption. Like, what are the real kinds of timelines here? Like, what if I'm just using, if I'm trying to do things on my own and trying to build all the kind of glue and security that I would need for an enterprise application on my own, as opposed to relying on something like the Pro AI Studio to do that, what's the difference in timeline?
Great question, John. So in our estimation, to take a typical app from POC to in production for running on the AIPC NPU could take you about 6 months. And this includes all of the discovery and iteration with identifying the model and the device that you would run on for your use case. It would involve all of the development to enable the runtime compatibility and all the model operations on the device. And then finally, you come to deployment, right, which will again be a very manual process of deploying it onto a fleet of apps. So up to, and I call that point time to initial value, right? So from build or discover to build to deploy, that's about 6 months in our estimation for a typical app, nothing too complex like a RAG chatbot, for instance. With Dell Pro AI Studio, you can shrink that down to under 6 weeks in our estimation. So that's about a 75% reduction in time. The time that you're going to still spend on is the time that you should spend on, which is picking the use case, making sure the solution outputs tuned for your users is delivering the accuracy that you need, and validating the outputs, right? So that's where we want developers to focus their time, which is really what they own, right? In all the parts that are painful that they just have to do to get to the point, from point A to point B, but they don't need to. That's what we're automating for them with Dell Pro AI Studio, right? So it's all of the stuff that they shouldn't have to do. We're working to solve that. And so, again, I repeat, for that typical app to go from discovery to deployment, time to initial value, we can reduce that from 6 months to 6 weeks.